All right, we should be recording then.
Perfect.
All right. So, do you want to start off, or do you want me to?
It really doesn't matter. I mean, when it comes down to it, I know with you being um, out on vacation, out of the country, right? We were having some difficulties. Me personally, getting in touch with you to really. There were a few things that came up with our current project with the condos, and obviously, I went ahead and went through Fawn per your direction verbally to really. To get that Oakwood upgrade, right? And come to find out, we with the sale of the complex, we didn't really envision, or more should I say, the end price for what the sale was did not encompass what we originally envisioned the upgrades would bring, if that makes sense. So obviously, I understand your frustrations, per of course our contract as far as getting everything in writing before we move forward. But I went through Fawn there to make the as an executive decision based on her agreement to move forward at the best interest of both of us, right? Of both parties trying to really maximize our dollar. So. I know that's where we're at here and really what caused our frustrations in our previous arguments. But when it comes down to it, I want to really nip that in the bud. I know we've had a past a great relationship based on what we provided with our projects and overall our reputability here in the market. Right, it's very small as far as the contractors, and we've worked well together. My clients really like our work, specifically here at for my company, of course, which puts forth out a great product ran by you guys. So that's kind of where I'm at. Obviously, I definitely want to hear your end of it before we kind of get into the negotiations. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at, kind of where, in my opinion, why we are here, if that makes sense.
All right, that makes sense. And so I agree. We've been doing business together on different projects for 9 years, and we've never had an issue like this before. So let's talk through the details and see what we can do. But I want to back up before we get back to the current invoice. I want to talk about a couple other topics and then come back to that. So the first
Sure.
thing I want to talk about is, well, there, just to briefly summarize that there's three main topics. There's the condo contract that you just described, but then also you have a $200,000 loan that you took out 5 years ago, and hold on one sec. I just want to make sure I'm getting my loan and my rental agreement. Uh, yes, so we have a $200,000 loan that you took out in the past, and it's at 10% interest, and you've renewed that several times, and I've made a point every time that came up that, hey, this is a loan that I can recall at any time, and you should be in a position to be able to repay that. And you've always assured me that your company maintains, enough liquid cash to be able to do that, and it would never be a problem. You've always made the payments on time. So I understand that there's some question as to whether or not you will be in a position to pay back this $200,000 at the end of the month. And that's one topic that I want to talk about. And then also you terminated um, rental agreement 90 days ago, which is fine. You had the right to do that, but you're now 2 months behind on rent of 5,000 per month, so 10,000 behind on rent. And I've got another renter lined up to come in there, but you gave 90-day notice, and we're waiting on that $10,000. So there's a $200,000 loan. There's $10,000 in overdue rent payments, in addition to the contract we just discussed with the condos. So maybe just if we could start with the rental. Um, can you tell me any more about why we're overdue on the rental payments?
Yeah, so with that, one of we're obviously, as you know, times are tough in the market, right? We're um, low on work, right? And it's been tough to make ends meet. So I do have your cash for that $10,000. We just need a little more for I'm waiting for cash from one of my other clients to get that payment. And obviously, I can write you that check, but there's just want to make sure I get that payment from my client to ensure that you get your funds right away. So, and then within a week or so, you will definitely have that $10,000. But yeah, so again, I have no hesitations to get that to you. But yeah, long story short, you will have your money here in the next week or so on that rent.
Okay, well, yeah, if we'll have that in the next week or so, that's fine. I'm curious. Yeah, your rent was $5,000, and I understand you found a place that's a little cheaper, that's maybe more convenient, close to wherever you need to be. Um, is that the reason why you were changing? Is just the amount that it was costing you each month?
Yeah, so and that was the main thing, obviously, right? If you find something that's a little less than what you're paying, of course, then you would be doing yourself and your company a disservice to try to more or less maximize your overall capital, right? But that's something that I'm definitely willing to revisit, just based on our previous conversations and the dilemma that we're in, and revisiting that rent as far as where we're at with our current housing and tenants. With your building, so definitely something on the table that, based on our current situations, that I'm definitely looking to potentially revisit and coming back. But of course, we can get into that there and towards the tail end
Okay,
here.
so maybe we'll come back to that. Maybe there's a better rate that could convince you to stay. I'd love to
For
not have
sure.
to leave. And then what about the $200,000 loan that we would like to recall?
So that's something I definitely want to hesitate as far as recall, and I understand that based on all of our conversations, you've always had that ability to recall that. But um, I, the reason that I definitely want you to really reconsider saying, hey, I need that $200,000, is basically for our overall working relationship, right? And we all understand that times are tough, and we'll get into some overall details of kind of what I'm willing to offer to make sure that we all come out ahead and continue our working relationship here. Because, like I said, for the last 9 years, this is our first hang up, right? And we've always been able to put out a great product for all of your clients, I should say, and in fact my clients, because we are working direct as one here. So that being said, I definitely want to really put out there that you withhold that recallment of that loan, and really work towards continuing this partnership, because to be honest, if you recall that, I don't see how we can move forward. But that's just kind of where I'm at with that.
Well, I can tell you my company has some other obligations, financial
Sure.
obligations that require those funds, which is why we had it arranged so that we could recall it. I understand it sounds like you're in a bad financial position, and despite previous conversations, you're going to have some difficulty paying that back.
Hmm.
So that well, let's go on. We'll come back to that as well. Let's talk about the condo contract. So, like you said, we've done business together for 9 years, never had any trouble, and you've dealt with our my secretary Fawn in the past. And in the past, she's been able to, make minor contract adjustments and make minor decisions, always checking with me. And this wasn't a minor change. Fawn, when she contacted me, was under the impression, from what she understood of what you wrote on the back of an envelope, that this was a 3% increase. Well, a 3% increase, your original contract for the work you were doing, a 3% increase would have been $21,000. This is a $250,000 increase. This was a 35, almost 36% increase on what was quoted in our written contract. That's not something I would agree to, and it's certainly not something we should agree to on the back of an envelope. Based on us working together for 9 years, you've worked with Fawn before, and you should understand that she's not going to approve a $250,000 change. And Fawn was uncomfortable because she felt that you were putting a lot of pressure on her to make a decision on the fly, and she can decide the colors of the walls, or if you want to do a certain brick pattern, but anything that was related to cost, she needed to check with me. And when she said 3%, that doesn't sound bad, so that's something that I could verbally approve, but not 35, 36% of your invoice. So that's it's such a drastic, and it's going from 700,000 to 950,000 on something that I didn't ask for. It takes the deal and actually makes it to where I lose money. It's not that I'm not making my profit. I'm going to actually owe money on this. There's no possible way that I can support that. So one question I have is, what even brought up the topic of the oak wood? It's not something we ever discussed. Well, how did this even get brought up?
Yeah, so the reason that the oak came into play here, so this sorry, excuse me. So the reason that I was really pushing for the oak was when we originally purchased these condos or decided on the agreement to go ahead and build these condos, there were no other rivals within the market, right? We were the only ones that were pushing here. And then one of our, of course, in long story short, after we made this agreement, we have the additional 75-unit condo project across town that is essentially going to be rivaling, I'm losing my words here, our business, right? So long story short, down the road, we have a supplier that came in that they had a great deal for oak, because essentially we're trying to do all we can to be less the outdoor competition in lack of a better term, right? So this oak, thinking that, hey, we're going to we're really put this upscale wood for baseboards and other woodwork within the building, and we're going to essentially outkick the coverage of our competition, and we're going to be the condo complex that's really going to be the top of the market there within town, right? And when I was pushing this with Fawn, and it really wasn't pushing, it was just more or less pleading my case, we were going to be profiting off of this. Obviously, long down the road, we didn't envision such a loss here, but basically what the reason for it was, I was looking out for the better of us. I was not doing, if I had any intention that this would fall as far as the deal is concerned, I wouldn't have done it, right? And based on our working relationship, and I understand that the large loss of the deal came into play was not calculated, but Fawn, I would not push that. And what really is concerning to me is something like this, even though you were unavailable for that current day, it took over 3 weeks after the work was completed for you to get back with me on this. So I mean, and I don't mean to turn the tables by any stretch of imagination, but
I was under the impression that it was 3% on your invoice. Is what
I'm sorry?
I was under the impression that it was a 3% increase on your invoice, which is $21,000. To me, that wasn't enough to worry about. But this was not a 3% increase on your invoice.
So basically, per unit that this would be sold at with the upgraded lumber would be at roughly $2,500 per unit, essentially. And obviously fell through. So I was looking at a per unit cost as far as what the difference would be. So essentially, yeah, 3% for sure.
What's 3% though?
I'm sorry.
Well, I'm just not sure. I mean, I'm honestly not sure in the math, like where the 3% even came from. I was looking at all the numbers, but in any case, I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, you're totally fine. Go ahead.
Well, let me ask you this. So, do you mind telling me what the deal was you got on the oak that stood out to you as being something to act on?
So the numbers that I ran here for this oak, right? So running my numbers, The total, based on experience for the condominium built for the original specifications, it would cost Viking a total of around 140, 145,000, right? And we were going to sell that at 160. So we would pocket 20 to. I'm sorry.
Are you able to tell me how much you got the oak for? If you're not able to, that's fine. Just that's what I was asking.
Sure, and I don't have that in front of me what the actual costs were, but of that oak, and I apologize. I'm sure I can find that here for you. Give me a second. Kind of looking through my papers.
But it's okay. I don't really need to know that. My point in asking the question is, we have $200,000 loan that's due.
And I apologize. 250,000 for the oak. I apologize.
The $250,000 is how much my bill went up. I was curious how much you paid the vendor for it, whoever you got the oak from. You said it was a good deal.
Good deal in terms of return.
Okay. Well, from my standpoint, you have an outstanding $200,000 loan that was called, that was due, plus an additional $10,000 in rent. So you owed $210,000, and there's a conversation with my secretary. Next thing you know, my invoice has gone up by $250,000, enough to cover, the original invoice and the money that's owed, the other money that's owed. And so after nine years of doing deals together, I feel like honestly, I mean, whether it was intended or not, I feel like it's a bait and switch. The conversation that was had with Fawn was unclear. It was not written in any formal. There's not anything other than the back of a napkin. And so in any case, if I'm not able to pay the 950, that's just not something that we can do. And even at the 700, I would be willing to, concede and pay a little over the 700, 3% increase on that, which was my understanding from Fawn, but not a 3% or not a $250,000 increase on the original bill. And if we can talk about potentially terms on the $200,000 loan or something like that to help you with your financial situation, maybe we can talk about variables, but it's not feasible for me to pay $950,000 or anything close to that, unfortunately.
Sure. No, I understand, and that's feasible, right? So this is what kind of I'm looking at here from a deal standpoint. You said 3% on the 700,000, correct?
That was my understanding when.
Sure. No, and if that's your understanding, then sure. Let's go with that, right? That equates to, again, you can double check my math here. 721,000 would be that 3% increase, correct?
Yeah.
So we'll start there with that as far as the contract is concerned, based on what we originally agreed upon and what was articulated to you from Fawn, right? And then moving on from there, we'll start discussing that rent, right? So that's the first piece of the pie, is the 721,000 rental agreement, right? Or the contract agreement. So the rental for your building is 500,000 or 500,000. I apologize. Whoa, no wonder I'm looking elsewhere. $5,000 rent, right?
Yes.
So we can keep that at 500,000. So standard price, or 5,000. I apologize. Sorry about that. So 5,000 rent, we'll keep it there, and then you will be getting in the next week or so that $10,000 that's owed in rent that's backed for the last 2 weeks.
Well, I'll be honest. I've got another. I don't have a signed contract yet with this person because I haven't gotten with him since my vacation. But I've got another tenant lined up that's willing to pay $6,000.
6,000, really interesting. All right.
So certainly we need the 10,000, but I'm not. I have a tenant lined up to come in right after you to take over at 6,000, which is more profitable for me. So, perhaps this will come up again though. Let's maybe let's talk about the 200,000.
The loan. So with that, I really recommend, again, based on our past uh, relationships and moving forward, because again, there's only roughly six companies in the area with similar business. We're all going through a tough period here, and it's not guaranteed that those companies will be able to put out as good a work as we have over the past 9 years. So again, with that 200,000, I really, based on our relationship, would like to keep that loan credit, that line of credit there, and just again, I understand that it's tough times. You're very frustrated. You want to call that loan, but again, based on work and business to be able to put out for my workers, pay my workers, it's really beneficial on the financial aspect for me.
Can I ask you, right now we have, let me grab my calculator here real quick. One sec. So right now you have $200,000 loan, and you have a 10% interest, and so you're making monthly payments of $1,667 on that loan. I assume are you paying that monthly, or are you just paying that once per year as far as paying the interest? Do you know?
I believe it's monthly.
Okay, so 1667 at 10%. Now I'm going to disclose to you the reason why I'm calling that $200,000. I'm calling that $200,000 because I can get the equivalent of 20% on that immediately or within 30 days if I invested elsewhere. So I'm very motivated to get that $200,000 back because I can get double the return. In lieu of me calling the $200,000 back, so you can keep those funds, would you be willing to increase the interest rate you're paying on that $200,000 to above 10%? So your monthly payment would go from 1667 to something higher, but you would not have to pay back the 200,000.
It's definitely something that I'm willing to negotiate, right? Because obviously in the long run, I might be paying a little more, depending on how far that goes out. But quite frankly, to be fully honest with you, I don't have that $200,000 in capital to pay you today. And that being said, too, just being fully upfront with you, to be the only way that I would be able to provide that funds is to really look to just being, again, full disclosure, based on our partnership and our relationship, look towards potentially getting rid of some of my assets that within our family. So just being upfront with that to be able to pay that information or pay that number to you. So I really would like to keep this relationship going. So again, I can maintain all my assets, be able to really put food on the table, maintain this relationship, continue to do work for not only myself, for my workers, right? And go from there. So I'm definitely willing to look into that, up in that interest rate for sure, if that's the only way that we can maintain this. So yeah, again, only being completely upfront with you based on our relationship.
If you could take the interest rate to 20%, so that your monthly payment would be $3,333 in lieu of me calling the loan, that would match the investment that I was intending to pursue, and I would no longer need a loan. Is that something that you could support?
Potentially, yeah. I'm not throwing that off the table for sure. What if we go 700,000 for the rental contract, or for the condo contract, right? It was 721.
Hold on a sec. Sorry. No. Okay. Yeah. I'm just gonna make notes. All right.
So
in the right place. Okay. So
700,000 for that in 15 days, of course, per the invoice. we'll go to $5,500 rent instead of 5,000. Again, you from a rent standpoint and from a tenant standpoint, I've always been good on that. I know I've been behind a couple months, but you'll get that in 2 weeks or up to 2 weeks, right? For sure, nothing more than that. You'll get your 2 months paid rent for there, and we'll knock the 20% to 15%.
Let me see. Let me figure that out for me. So, give me a sec. Got a little bit of math to do here. See where I'm at. Let me see. Okay.
The overall with the 5% less of interest, obviously you won't get the immediate return, or as far as the double that you were envisioning, but in the over the standard number of years after that, you'll eventually get to what you're thinking as far as immediate return there.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, again, what I'm looking at in a long term is just this overall relationship, right? Kind of putting this one hiccup in the past, and obviously, if this happens again, we can definitely revisit all of this and just say, hey, we're done. I don't want to get to that point though, of course, because we've always been working great together. Outside of this minor / major hiccup here, but it's a good. Well, it's all it is, in my opinion, is a monetary learning experience.
Well, let me ask you for the $200,000 loan. That's okay. Hold on. Just let me double check it. So, I'm going to ask for one of two things if you can support it. To either increase the percentage on the $200,000 loan to something more than 15%, or to increase the monthly rent from $5,500 to $6,000. I want to try and get $500 on one of those. See, I'm actually, I'm taking a hit on what I could be getting in rent, and I'm taking a hit on what I could be getting on that $200,000 if I had invested it elsewhere. I'm taking a hit on both sides, and I'd like to try and even that out a little bit if that's something you can support.
So as far as the interest rate, what are you thinking?
Let's see here. Doing bad math. I apologize. One sec. We could go to 18%. That'd be a monthly payment of $3,000. That's a $500 increase, or leave that at 15% and take the monthly rent up to $6,000. It's $500 increase either way. Is that something that would fit within your numbers? I'm still taking a little bit of a hit, but not quite as badly.
Yeah, so let's do this. Let's do 700, 6,000 rent, 10,000 due for the rent, and keep the interest at 15.
That
And you got,
that sounds like a deal.
all right. So again, so $700,000 per contract in 15 days. The 55 or $6,000 rent. I apologize. $10,000 for the 2 months of rent that's due, and then we will keep the $200,000 loan at an increase of 5% to 15 as opposed to 10 where it is today.
Yes, I think that sounds good. Now, I need to check one thing. One sec. That does sound good. Just I have that $700,000 in the bank and can write a check. I just need to make sure. So I believe I'm able to pay it within 30 days of the invoice. I don't mind paying it in 15 days. I just need to make sure. One sec. I'm checking my balance sheet here to make sure that I'm able to do that and I'm not breaking any bank rules here. Give me one sec.
Sure.
Does sound right, so I want to be sure I'm okay. Where are we? Where are we? Here we go. Okay. I just needed to make sure I had the right note here. I think that's good to go, so we can write a check for the 700,000. You should be able to deposit that as soon as you need to deposit it.
All right, good. So good. Well, again, I apologize for any frustrations and inconvenience this was. Again, it was just miscommunication. I had the best interest of both of us in this, but definitely a learning experience here. Something we can always continue to move forward. We definitely have a good plan in place, and I'm glad that in the long run that we're still continuing our partnership. So I appreciate it, only good things to come.
All right. Well, thanks very much, and sorry if I was snappy. We were upset.
No, I get it. But yeah, have a good rest of your night, and we'll definitely get this contract all signed up, and we'll continue good work together.
Sounds good. I'll stop recording. Let's not hang up.
Cool.